Hey, how's everyone doing? My I wrote my paper on The Great Gatsby, and my thesis is the entire book that is The Great Gatsby is a pattern of the commitment of sin and its reciprocal punishment, which is executed under the watchful eyes of Dr. T.J. Eckleburg. Now, I chose this topic because there's a great deal of religion throughout The Great Gatsby. We see this in many different cases. One of them is through Gatsby. We see him as a very religious man, which is like brought out in a quote on page 104, which starts off with he was the son of God, which many scholars say, which including Mr. Bernard Tanner of the English Journal believe he's a almost not a reincarnation, but almost a characterization of Jesus Christ within the novel. Um, you know, he is he is very spiritual, and he also worships the green light, which we see in the chapter 108. He's he's not technically worshiping the Daisy per sense when he reaches out longing for Daisy, but he's in general just worshiping and is faithful and is faithful to Daisy, but in the same sense, he's not worshiping Daisy, but he's also faithful to a cause and worshiping a cause, which goes to show kind of religion within himself and within the book. To go along with that, we also see a great religion within Dr. T.J. Eckleburg. Now, again, scholars also agree that scholars agree that he is a characterization of God within the novel, which is brought up in the Oxford Encyclopedia of American Literature. Um, and they state that he's watching over the town, and he's watching over all their actions, waiting, and according to Mr. Wilson, which I'm about to bring up, is waiting for his time to, and I quote, waiting for the final day of retribution. Um, and as I say Wilson because we see throughout the text that this is like the first instance where uh, that there's a character that displays belief that they're like that the sign is a reincarnation of God, as Wilson, a man who would really know you know religious affiliation before this point, says God is watching over us. He's watching all our actions, which of course he's referring to Dr. T.J. Eckleburg. Um, now, saying that Dr. T.J. Eckleburg is God, and also pointing out the other religious undertones within the story. We also talk about the other part of my thesis, which is the pattern of sin. There's obviously throughout the book there's a huge pattern of sin. There's lying, um, you know, drinking under the prohibition laws, but of course adultery between the four main Myrtle, Tom, Daisy, and Gatsby. Um, Now, to reciprocate for this like punishment of sins, it all goes under this master. I call it a master plan, because everything that happens right underneath, Dr. T.J. Eckleburg's watch, right underneath the sign, and it's so not perfect, but so just you know everything just happens so perfectly and affects all the people all the people together in a way that you can't really call it ironic in any sense, just because of the way it works out. Um, Now, now that plan I'm talking about, of course, the plan is Mercer getting hit and run by Daisy in Tom's car. Now, of course, the first person this targets as punishment is Myrtle. She lies to her husband, Mr. Wilson, about having an affair with Tom by saying she's going to go to her sister's house when she's really having a rendezvous with Mr. Buchanan, and for that, her punishment, while it seems very harsh, is death. Um, and to and now to go on to Tom, he while his punishment isn't death, we see him, of course. Well, of course, he's having an affair with Myrtle, and of course he had previous affairs before Daisy. But his punishment is that he loses the woman that he cares about, and we know that he cares about her because when we see him walking up to Myrtle's body, when as they're driving up from that hotel scene, um, we see him, we see him act in a way that we don't see Tom before. We see him very emotional, very upset, wondering how this could have happened, why this happened. That's a better term for it. And some could argue, oh, this is just because he's lost his mistress and he just has to be with one woman for the rest of his life. But that, but I say nay, because if that was the case, we still wouldn't see that type of emotion from a man that's been having affairs throughout his entire marriage. Um, so his punishment, as I mentioned, is having to stick, well, having staying in the sanctity of marriage, but also losing a woman that he cares about. Now, the next person, of course, that is affected by this is Daisy, the woman that hit Myrtle in that car. Now, her punishment is very interesting because she doesn't she doesn't lose like a person. Well, she does, but what happens is, she hits her and she's very distraught. Obviously, she goes back to the house, and Tom comes back, and he kind of begs for her back. And instead of staying with Gatsby, she decides she decides to stay with Tom. And this seems like, all right, where's the punishment here? But here it is. She has to get to be with her one true love the rest of her life. Now, she says she loves Tom, but at the same time, she's fallen in love with Gatsby twice within the book. Once once while they were young, and then once in the heat of the book. Now, to me, if you fall in love with a person twice, to me that's a true love. That's Gatsby. Gatsby is her one true love, and she's with Tom, a person who obviously doesn't really, respect her, for the fact that he's cheated on her throughout their marriage, and she now has to live a life where she's with someone that doesn't really care or respect her, and also living a life of what if I stayed with Gatsby. That's her punishment. Speaking of Gatsby, the final person that, of course, is affected, the final person of the adulterers that was affected is Gatsby. Now, while he is, while like his reason is kind of the purest, that he truly loves Daisy, he does anything for her. That doesn't make his actions right. Now, we see him constantly. We see his love. We see his love tainted in a way, because in order to get that, he has to commit many a crime in order to be with Daisy again. He gains his wealth through, but Fitzgerald makes it through a series of crimes. He goes against prohibition, getting alcohol for these lavish parties, and also, not to mention, he's trying to break up a marriage. Doesn't matter for what reason, it's still not morally right. So in the end, his punishment is not being able to be with Daisy for the rest of his life, and he has to live a life of of misery, of not being able to be their one true love. But we go back to the aspect of Dr. T.J. Eckleburg being being a son of God, but God showing mercy, because he uses his ability to kind of show Wilson that show Wilson that he is a god, as I mentioned before, and Wilson kind of uses this, and he uses it in a way, and he goes and kills Gatsby. Now, people would say that this is part of Gatsby's punishment, but I say this is mercy, because Gatsby would have had to live the rest of his life in complete utter dismay, because he's no longer with his one true love, and he's constantly living in pain, suffering, and now he's able to be in peace. While it's death, it's still peace. Also, not to mention, to go along with also the Jesus Christ aspect, if he is the Son of God, he's kind of dying for his sins. He's dying for also everyone's sins, which is a very interesting, kind of point that Fitzgerald brings out. That the fact that he dies. To sum it all up, we see Dr. T.J. Eckleburg as a godlike figure. We see the great amount of religion within this book that allows Dr. Eckleburg to be this godlike figure, and allow him to punish, the main characters for their sins, and kind of show a karma-like aspect. Do what you've done to others. If you act good, good things will happen, and if you act bad, evil will befall you. And that's really it. I hope all of you have a great summer, and I hope you enjoyed my presentation. And thank you very much.